All right, you need your stars to lead you, and Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum failed again for the New Orleans Pelicans, and it should raise big questions about their future. Plus, we'll look at the defense and the center position in a post-game reaction to Game 2 and a live episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider Credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, here with y'all for a live post-game show for Locked On Pelicans after the Pels lose to the Oklahoma City Thunder 124-92. Straight up, and there's no way we're going to sugarcoat this, getting embarrassed here on Locked On Pelicans. Not at all what you wanted to see from them in this game. We're going to break down the stars not performing. Brandon Ingram, CJ McCollum, basically no showing, in my opinion, here. And what's it mean for the future? The defense, was it good in Game 1? Not exactly, and it fell apart in Game 2, and I'm going to tell you why. And then Jonas Valanciunas, Larry Nance Jr., what do the Pelicans do with the center position going forward? Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Monopoly Go. Get in the game, join your friends, download Monopoly Go now free on the App Store and Google Play. I'm competitive. It's a lot of fun to play. The mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. And of course, become an everydayer. Listen Monday through Friday to Locked On Pelicans. We are the #1 Pelicans podcast covering everything you want. And look, if you are an everydayer of Locked On Pelicans, a lot of what happened in this game didn't surprise you, especially the defense. More on that coming up later in the show. But we've got to start with this. Look, it's a star-driven league in the NBA, and Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum straight up didn't get it done. Ingram's numbers don't look terrible at the end. 18 points on 10 shot attempts. That's really good. But he did nothing in the first half of the game. Absolutely nothing. The first half of the game, he had 4 points. He had more turnovers than shot attempts. Think about that for a minute. He found some offense in the third quarter, but by then it was too little and too late. One game after having a horrible performance because of the defense from Lou Dort, and we'll touch on the refs in a moment, he had said, okay, if that's how they're going to let us play, I'm going to be ready for it. Guess what? He wasn't ready for it. He may as well not have been out there on the court with the way he was just not moving. It's one thing to miss shot attempts. We'll look at that with CJ McCollum. It's one thing to miss shot attempts that are good looks that you're taking. It's another thing to do absolutely nothing. And that's what Brandon Ingram did in the first half. He got it going a little bit better in the third quarter. Great. That does you no good when you're already down double digits and the game is effectively over. Where is the Brandon Ingram that we were talking about needing on that 5-game, 6-game homestand where the Pelicans struggled without him? Where's the Brandon Ingram from a couple of years ago in the playoffs when he averaged almost 30 points per game against the, I'm blanking here, Phoenix Suns? Brandon Ingram's shot chart in this was 1 shot in the restricted area and no threes. It's the modern NBA. You need to actually have some aggression, and it was just non-existent. Now, he started to get to the rim and attack the basket in the third quarter. It's showing his no shot attempts there, but he got fouled and go to the line, and those don't show up as shot attempts in the shot chart here. But this was a pretty pitiful performance from him, right? 18 points, 10 shot attempts. That efficiency looks good. You're right, it does. Except you need your stars to carry you, and you need more than 18 points from him. Chet Holmgren, 26 points in this game. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 33 points. Where was Brandon Ingram? The shot attempts, the shot chart, the way he plays within the offense just has not worked this year. To take no threes in a game when you need to keep up with the three-point shooting of the Thunder, who are hot. More on that when we talk about the defense. To not take one in this game is wild. When you had nothing else going, why not take threes? But he didn't do that. Defensively, he was no good either. This is a guy where we've praised his defense all season long, but he just didn't step up in this one. He basically, look, at a certain point, you could have just benched him and it might have been the move. He was a minus 30. That is the team worst. Trey Murphy played more than him, was a minus 27, right? CJ McCollum was but played more than him and had a better plus minus, not by much. Herb Jones played more than him, was a minus 16. To play that many minutes and have such a negative impact on the game is just not what you want. Not when you're eligible for a max contract extension after this year. And right now, should the Pelicans offer that to him? I'm not really sure. Can you build a team around him and Zion Williamson with how clunky they've looked? If he delivered in the postseason, it's a whole lot easier to justify, and he hasn't. Say what you want about CJ McCollum, and he had a bad game too. They are picking on him defensively. More on that again in the next segment here. He at least took good shots. His threes were open that he was taking. He just wasn't making them, right? 15 points on 14 shot attempts. 6 of 14 from the field is not a good game from him. But you saw some aggression from him, driving to the basket, trying to create some things. There was one point when the Pelicans started to get back into this game in the second quarter where CJ McCollum either scored or created 8 straight points for the Pelicans. You saw no stretch like that from Brandon Ingram really in this one. Your stars have to carry you. And if they don't, one, are they stars? And two, do you have to consider moving them at a certain point? And this playoff series and the struggles from Brandon Ingram has been absolutely eye-opening. And this is something that we're really going to look at this offseason on Locked On Pelicans, because now 0-2 in this series, that offseason is going to be here sooner than we think if Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum don't step up. You have to hit your shots, CJ. It's as simple as that. You're paid $36 million. You have to make your shots. He didn't in this game. That's going to be a problem, and you're never going to win a playoff series when the other team's star players are absolutely doing it. And look, the refs aren't doing a ton of favors here, but when you lose by basically 30 points in a game, it's not on the refs. It's not on the physicality of the defense. And even if it is, Brandon Ingram said he was going to be ready for that. He wasn't ready for it in this game at all. And this team just looked terrible to lose this one. 124-92, just getting lit up in every capacity. It was awful. Their defense did them no favors either in this one. The offense tied into that as well. Let's take a look at that, because this has been a good defensive team. But if you are an everydayer of Locked On Pelicans, the defensive effort in this one and what we saw from them shouldn't surprise you, because we kind of knew they were going to struggle. I let you in on that secret. Let's break down exactly what happened, and if the Pelicans have an answer for that, that's coming up here next in a live episode of Locked On Pelicans. Right now, though, I'm excited to tell you about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. I work on all of my vehicles. I have a 50-year-old car, I've got a current car, and I keep them all running, and I work on them with parts from eBay Motors. Whether you want speed, power, style, superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, make it sound louder, eBay Motors has you covered. An old classic car, they have the parts too, and those parts are going to fit every single time. And with over 122 million parts for your number one vehicle, you're always going to find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, trust me, I really work on all of my cars. My old Corvette is running because of eBay Motors. It's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your vehicle alive over at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the number one Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want. The defensive adjustments that didn't work for the Pelicans we'll look at here. The star players not stepping up, what it means for the offseason. We cover it all here. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcast and join almost 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Do you have to turn down the volume with all of that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, where this show is also streaming right now. A free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the latest and biggest sports stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you the can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. By the way, it's NFL Draft today. For your second listen, go listen to Locked On Saints. Ross Jackson making sense of everything black and gold. New QB, please. He's going to be covering it over at the Locked On Saints podcast. So right now on Locked On Pelicans, we're talking about the 124-92 loss for the New Orleans Pelicans in Game 2 to the Oklahoma City Thunder. We're doing a live post-game instant reaction show. They struggled on defense in this game. To have the sixth best defense all season long and then come in and look like one of the worst might shock you, but not if you're an everydayer of Locked On Pelicans. If you're an everydayer, it means you listen Monday through Friday. I told you this was coming. And it happened immediately in this game. The Oklahoma City Thunder shot 14 of 29 from three. That's 48.3%. Let's round up. Let's just say they shot 50% from three here. That's one game after they shot in the low 30s from three. Those were wide open looks for Oklahoma City in that first game, though. And I said the Pelicans were not doing a good job of contesting the three-point shot. And that OKC, when they as a team review that film, they're going to go, keep taking those shots, keep shooting, because they're going to fall at a higher rate because those are great looks. And we're going to run this team out of the building. Yes, game one was close, 94-92, only losing by 2. But if OKC shoots even average from three in that game, they win by double digits. They shot better than average in this game, and we see what the final score was here. This shouldn't have surprised you that the Pelicans were giving up wide open looks. They did it in game one. They're terrified of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander attacking the basket. And they're playing off of him. They're switching. We'll get into that part in a second here. And it's leading to them not defending the three-point line because they are scared of him. So this isn't working, because Shai went out and scored 33 points, and you let them shoot 50%, let's say, from three in this game. The defensive adjustments, just the defensive game plan is broken right now for what they tried to do in this game. So what the Pelicans do defensively always is they switch. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has the ball. Chet Holmgren comes over, sets a screen for him, right? And then whoever is guarding Chet switches on to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and then whoever was guarding Shai, Herb Jones most likely, switches on to Chet. Or if it's Shai and it's Jalen Williams, or Josh Giddey is a better example. Josh Giddey comes over and sets a screen for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. CJ McCollum is on Josh Giddey. He switches on to Shai. It puts Herb Jones on Josh Giddey. That is a mismatch in favor of the Oklahoma City Thunder. They are attacking. That happened in the game-winning shot by Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in game one. They had a Herb Jones on him. Josh Giddey set the screen, and they switched CJ on to him, who promptly fouled him for an and one, sent him to the line, and that was the ball game and all she wrote right then and there. You had Herb Jones on him. Why switch? The Pelicans tried to address that. Willie Green talked about it after practice the other day, going into this one, that they don't want to maybe just commit to switching absolutely everything, which I think is somewhat of the right game plan here. So in game two, their big adjustment defensively was, let's not switch, let's fight through screens. Didn't work. Look, applaud the effort. At least they tried something differently there, but the results speak for themselves, right? It didn't work at all. One of the things they were doing when they tried to fight through screens is what's called dying on a screen. Basically, the screen's working. You set that pick, guy runs into you, and it frees up the other guy. And now someone then has to come over and rotate over to cover the man with the ball who has some space. So now your defense is rotating, and a rotating defense you can beat with superior ball movement, and the Oklahoma City Thunder have that. So now someone's rotating over to cover Shai, which means he kicks the ball out, which means now someone needs to go rotate to that guy to cover him, which means they pass the ball again, and they were generating wide open three-point shots. That's why early on in this game, the Oklahoma City Thunder were shooting 64% from three in the first quarter. It was because the Pelicans shifted and changed their defensive game plan to not switch, to fight through screens, and it straight up didn't work. So what they did later in the game was just go back to switching everything. But we saw in game one, that didn't work either. You see the conundrum here, the problem for New Orleans and their defense. So now, as the game progresses, you're getting CJ McCollum switched onto Shai Gilgeous-Alexander again and again and again. And CJ's not a good defender. You have to have Herb Jones on him, and the Thunder are doing everything they can to get Herb Jones off of him. And because what didn't work in the first quarter was trying to keep him on there because they were getting burned by other people. Shai was kind of quiet in the first quarter, I thought. They went back to what didn't work there. So you made an adjustment, it didn't work, and then you reverted to the thing that didn't work in the first place. It's not an ideal position for the Pelicans to be in, and that means they're going to need another defensive adjustment, a big-time defensive adjustment, going into game 3 when you're at home? Is that more zone? Is that something else? Is that just blitzing Shai? Maybe. I'm not entirely sure what they're going to do yet. I'm going to review this film. We'll look at that in probably tomorrow's episode of Locked On Pelicans. But they've got to do something because they got burned defensively. But look, I don't want to say like I told you so, but I told you so. And if you're an everydayer, this didn't shock you going into this game. But that's where they really, truly lost this. This impacts their offense too. The Pelicans thrive off of turning defense into transition points on offense. But when their defense is getting burned and can't force turnovers, and they didn't force turnovers in this game, the Oklahoma City Thunder had just 8. How many fast break points do you think the Pelicans scored? I'll pause for dramatic effect here. They had just 6. They had just 6 points in the fast break. They had just 6 points off of those 8 Oklahoma City Thunder turnovers. You're not going to win if you're the Pelicans by playing that much in the half court. And then when you are now forced into the half court, if you turn the ball over, you're trying to defend in transition. The Thunder, by contrast, had 14 points in transition, and that's off of 17 turnovers for the New Orleans Pelicans that resulted in 22 points for the Oklahoma City Thunder. That is a surefire way for New Orleans to lose games, and they did in this one in pretty dramatic fashion. Ingram, CJ didn't help them offensively, but the defense gave them no chance in this. You're not going to win very many games when your defense can't get stops and when your star players aren't playing well whatsoever. It was just an overall, look, it was a disaster of a night for the New Orleans Pelicans. Maybe this is, in a way, a good thing because it'll wake them up. Maybe this wakes Brandon Ingram up, who did find a little bit of success in that third quarter. But you need to make some big-time adjustments if you want to extend the series. And look, beyond just having pride and wanting to win games, it's in their best interest to extend the series because maybe you get Zion Williamson back. He talked the other day after practice saying, it's definitely a realistic possibility that he can return in the postseason. They're going to reevaluate him after game 4, game 5, and potentially game 5. Maybe he could play in a game 6, 7. I think that's a bit of a stretch, but there's an opportunity there. If you need the reinforcements coming, you've got to extend this series to give yourself a chance. And the Pelicans are doing a very good job of beating themselves right now. We can talk about the refs. We could yell about the refs. They weren't good in this game. They called it differently than they did game 1 and how they have all playoffs. But I think it's better to look at this team as a whole. Ingram's struggling, and it wasn't because of the refs. CJ struggling, wasn't because of the refs. And the defense, them struggling, wasn't because of the refs. It was just the game plan didn't work. And maybe this is simply OKC is the better team. They have 8 more wins than the Pelicans do, 9 more wins than the Pelicans do. They're a better team. There's no denying that. They're the 1 seed for a reason. New Orleans is 8. But this was pretty embarrassing. This was pretty embarrassing, and the Pelicans need to make big-time adjustments because their adjustment didn't work. So how do you adjust for the adjustment going into game 3? They're going to need a different defensive game plan here. And if they do get some stops, they can get out in the fast break, in transition, run, and it wakes their offense up a little bit, and that would be a really big thing. The other issue that they've got to figure out is the center position. And this is where I don't know if there's a great answer, but I want to look at how Jonas Valanciunas played. They went to him early, scored 11 straight points for New Orleans right in the beginning. But the rest of the way, it was really dicey. Is it time for Morley Nance Jr.? Is it time for someone else on the roster or a different answer altogether? I'm going to tell you what that might be. That's coming up here next in a live episode of Locked On Pelicans. Right now, though, today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by our sponsor, BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off of our chest. Big or small, certain things can really start to get to you, and it's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased in your life. So today, I want to say how I really feel about something, and you might even be thinking about the same thing here. This Pelicans team's got to have some more pride. They've got to have some more pride and go out and act like they truly care. And I feel like this is a bad representation of the city of New Orleans, particularly with that environment at OKC where it was awesome. And I'm hopeful that we're going to get a good crowd turnout in the Smoothie King Center for Game 3. But Therapy can be different for everybody. Most of us have bigger problems than our favorite sports teams, and it's important to get things off your chest every once in a while. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA to get started. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by DoorDash. Mother's Day is around the corner. Are you prepared for it just yet? You probably want to get something thoughtful for your mom, and you can do that on DoorDash. Surprise her from wherever you are with a fresh bouquet, the latest tech, gift cards, self-care treats, and more to make her day that much better. Does your mom have a sweet tooth? Is she a tech enthusiast, a beauty connoisseur, or is she outdoorsy? No matter what she's into, you can make her smile with a flower bouquet, makeup, tech gear, workout wear, and more. Pair flowers with a gift card so she can celebrate any way she wants. Is she a bookworm? Try a bookstore gift card. Does she love a good latte? Get her a gift card to her favorite coffee shop. You can't go wrong with all of the options over on DoorDash. So get all your Mother's Day gifts all in one place and get 50% off your next order up to $15 when you spend $15 or more on your next flower, convenience, grocery, or retail order now with code LOCKEDONNBA. That's code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA. Order using DoorDash today. Terms apply. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this New Orleans Pelicans team. We are live streaming this to the Locked On NBA channel, Locked On Pelicans, by the way, and Locked On Sports Today. So please subscribe to all of those as well. I am one of the co-hosts on the Wednesday episode of Locked On NBA. If you want the national perspective on all of the postseason games happening, check out the Locked On NBA podcast. Make that your second listen today. And become an everydayer of Locked On Pelicans. That means you listen Monday through Friday. And if you're watching live with me right now, comment on YouTube if you are an everydayer as well. So let's get into, look, the main reasons they lost this game are the stars didn't show up. Same issue in game one. The defense really struggled in this game too because the game plan wasn't bad and they just didn't have the right kind of adjustment to what the Oklahoma City Thunder wanted to do. Look, sometimes there's just not an answer. Sometimes there is just not an answer, and this team is better than you are. It hurts to hear, right? We want to look for blame and focus on one thing because then if they can change that, you can go and win the next game. You can go and win the series. If the refs are a problem, let's blame them, right? Sometimes it's just not the case. Look, OKC's good. They were a top 5 offense, a top 5 defense. They were right in the running for the 1 seed all year long. This team has been very, very good. Let's not lose sight of that, right? In the words of Willie Green, give them credit, but it's also true. However, the Pelicans shouldn't get blown out like that. That game one was winnable. That means game two and the rest of the series is winnable too. The Stars have to play better and the coaching staff has to come up with the right defensive game plan, and we'll see if they can do that in game three. Tomorrow on Locked On Pelicans, we're going to have another crossover, by the way, with the Locked On Thunder podcast. Rylan Stiles, we're going to kind of break down what we've seen from the first 2 games, and he's got some insight on how to beat this Thunder team. He was texting me a lot during the game, and it was really great to see. We're going to share that with y'all in another crossover episode of Locked On Pelicans, Locked on Thunder. But let's talk about the center position, because this has kind of been a lightning rod thing all season long for New Orleans. Do you use Jonas Valanciunas more? Do you use Larry Nance Jr. more? Are they just kind of failing this entirely? So the Pelicans got off to a good start with Jonas Valanciunas. He scored 11 points, straight points for New Orleans, 5 of 7 in the first quarter. That's like just straight up really good, right? But the rest of the way he struggled. And so while I thought he did a good job in that first period, you saw the Oklahoma City Thunder adjust to him very, very quickly. That doesn't mean it's the wrong thing to go with him more, and I'll explain why coming up here in a moment. He finished with 19 points on 14 shot attempts, 7 rebounds. That's not bad, right? But he had just 8 points the second, third, and fourth quarters combined. It wasn't the same impact as that first quarter, and it wasn't because they were using him less, and part of it was that. But he also played almost 9 minutes in the second quarter. In the second half of this game, while he played very limited, he still could have made more of an impact than he did, and he wasn't able to because Chet Holmgren, despite him looking so skinny, I still think is a bad matchup. in the second half, you saw him go one-on-one against Chet, and Chet just blocked him, right? Chet was playing more physical than most Pelicans out there. He's playing more physical than Brandon Ingram was. Brandon Ingram tried to go into him a couple times, and Chet Holmgren just absorbed those body blows, right? JV looks like he has a significant advantage there, but his post-game isn't that advanced, and it was creating a part of a problem. And so if Chet Holmgren's going to win that matchup, it's an issue. And you saw that here, where JV wasn't the answer. He wasn't necessarily the problem either, but he certainly wasn't the answer. I think when you look at the center position here, this is just an issue for New Orleans. It's been all season long, and hindsight is they should have done something at the trade deadline. Maybe it was going to get Daniel Gafford or doing something else, and they've put themselves in this position. You get some flashes of Jonas Valanciunas, but right after that, he struggled defensively. Chet Holmgren was hitting threes over him. Chet Holmgren was getting down low and scoring against him and kind of just did what he wanted. And if he's going to do that, I don't know how playable JV can be. 26 points for Chet, 3 of 6 shooting from 3, 7 rebounds, right? He was really good in this game. 2 blocks. That's not something that the Pelicans really have an answer to. Now, you also had, up and down minutes from Larry Nance Jr. Defensively, he kind of gives you a little bit more. He can get out on the perimeter. He can defend a little bit better. He was doing a very good job rebounding, because that's an area that you can beat up the Oklahoma City Thunder. They're very susceptible on the boards, and even though Larry Nance Jr. is undersized, well, that doesn't become as big of an issue against a team like the Thunder. But if he's going to play 14 and a half minutes and just give you 2 points, what are we doing here, right? Like, you have to score points, and when you lose 124-92, you got to score. If you can't break 100, you got to score here. And so kind of where I'm at with this is, look, don't play Cody Zeller. You saw Jeremiah Robinson-Earl get some run after Larry Nance Jr. left the game injured, and that was the correct move, I think. But at this point, here's kind of where I'm at. If your offense really struggles to score, if Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum just aren't going to really give you anything, and they didn't in this game, then just roll with JV, right? Like, if you can't score, who cares how good your defense is, right? The Thunder could have been held to 100 points and they still would have won this game. At that point, you may as well just kind of go all offense and just see if you can somehow get a little bit hot and beat this team. And that probably does mean more Jonas Valanciunas and playing through him a little bit more, even if I don't think it's the best idea. And that's more born out of me being like, I got nothing for you here. I don't know if there's an answer. This game was pretty demoralizing. You can probably hear it in me too. They can go out and compete with this team, but they've got to find some offense, and it's not Larry. I don't think Jonas is the answer, but I know that the answer at this point is not Larry Nance Jr. You kind of get what I'm saying there with that center position. This is what they're going to try and upgrade first thing if we want to kind of get a hint of the offseason here. I don't know if they're going to look to move Brandon Ingram or CJ McCollum yet. This is going to be a whole bunch of shows we're going to do, but I'm going to give you a preview of it kind of right now. When you kind of try and look at this situation and triage it, right? You're hurt. You don't necessarily jump right to surgery. You try rest. You try other things first. So what they're going to try and do first is bring in a different center and see if that maybe unlocks this team a little bit more. Given the way Brandon Ingram is playing, I don't think that's going to do a whole lot. It won't hurt to bring in a different center, but you need to find something in there because you can't actually combine Larry Nance Jr. and Jonas Valanciunas into one player. That wouldn't be fair to their families at all, even if that would kind of solve a lot of what the Pelicans need right now. And we don't have the technology to do that yet. So you have to upgrade the center position or just change it. And then if that doesn't work, that's when you have to make kind of hard decisions around Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, and what have you. But having Zion back would certainly help in this one. And maybe they could do that if they find a way to extend this series, but that's not something that they really have been able to figure out just yet. Let me know in the comments down below what you think is the biggest reason why they lost this game, why they were outplayed by the Oklahoma City Thunder. There's a lot of them, but you've got to get more from Brandon Ingram. Like, this was his opportunity to shine. He's been a little bit overshadowed by Zion Williamson all season long, right? Well, it's fair or unfair. It's been the truth. This was his chance, and he just hasn't taken it. And for a guy that, is going to be up for a 25-30% max deal of the salary cap, do you feel comfortable paying him $55 million a year, $60 million a year after this playoff series? Lu Dort's a good defender. Don't get me wrong. Is he this good? I don't think so. So right now, to kind of sum up this episode, this game, I think, was emblematic of the problems that the Pelicans have kind of faced all season long. Brandon Ingram, the shot chart, the clunky offense at times has really been an issue for this team. You saw it kind of come up here. Defensively, they've given up a lot of wide open threes. They've done a good job of contesting it. They're seeing that fall apart right now. And then the center position is kind of a mess of their own making by not doing anything at the trade deadline. And I said they shouldn't. I was completely wrong about that one. Oh boy, was I wrong about that one. But now they're in this position hopefully it's on the coaching staff kind of at this point to figure out some of the answers and to get better play out of Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum, because if they don't make some changes quickly going into game 3 and significant changes at that, well, this is going to be over in 4 games. The Pelicans would be lucky to win one right now with the way that they are playing. So there you go. So that's going to do it for a live post-game reaction episode of Locked On Pelicans. Hopefully you could enjoy Locals Thursday at Jazz Fest and take that in a little bit tomorrow. It's beautiful here in New Orleans right now. And then we get to be back in the Smoothie King Center for Game 3, where I think the atmosphere is going to be awesome. The Pelicans are going to need it. So let's pack the Smoothie King Center, see what we can do to help this team get a victory, extend this series, and then maybe get Zion Williamson back and see if that can change things pretty dramatically. The Pelicans certainly know they've got to play better here, but you got to get more for Brandon Ingram, CJ McCollum. Defense has to be better, and you've got to figure out what to do with the center position. So that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Subscribe, join almost 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube, and I'll see y'all tomorrow.